Hi, my name is Brad Favreau. I am the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Biddeford, and welcome to Believe in Biddeford. Biddeford City Hall is probably the most iconic building in the city. The clock tower and the dome dominate the city skyline. Even after more than 100 years, it still functions very well as our primary public building. It's rugged, it is well built, it's beautiful, but after all these years, the building, in particular the clock tower and the dome, are starting to show some age. So we're here today to discuss City Hall, the clock tower, and what's recently being done to remedy the situation. I'm here today with Charles Butler, a local historian and author, Phil Radding, the facilities director for City Hall, Louise Merriman, vice president of the Biddeford Historical Society, and Dulai Pupor, the executive director of Heart of Biddeford. So Charles, I'd like to start with you. You have so much wealth of knowledge about the history of not only City Hall, but of Biddeford in general, but I'd like to zero in on what makes City Hall special? What makes our current City Hall special?
Well, the first story dates back to the very first building, but the building that we have now rests upon the foundations of the first one. The design was by George Calvin Stevens, a very famous architect from Portland,
John
Maine.
Calvin Stevens, correct?
Yeah, John Calvin Stevens.
Yep.
And he accommodated the city by designing a building that would fit on the foundations of the original. Mm-hmm. And the first building had burned and had been underinsured. And so the city was pretty desperate. The design that he came up with was one of his best, I think.
We think so too.
It's really, and the opera house is part and parcel with it, mm-hmm. and that's a delightful place.
Now called City Theater.
Yeah, it's almost always had a place, a theater in that spot of some type. Mm. Before city halls were even there, both of them. Mm-hmm. There was a building there called Central Block, mm-hmm. and there was an auditorium in that as well.
Are there any elements in the building that we occupy today that were new at the time, that were not a part of previous city halls?
The upper stories are new. The granite stories that were right on Main Street, that stone is the stone of the first City Hall.
Which was built in when? 1855? 1855? Yeah.
55, 56.
Great, great. Phil, how long have you been facilities director for the city?
I've been 1850 what? Sorry. Not funny. Okay, bad. No more jokes.
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
You're coming up.
Oh, shoot.
I've been with the city for 11 years, getting on 12. When I first came to Biddeford, one of the interview questions was to write a one-page scenario of, actually it was 2 pages, what would I do with the high school and what would I do with City Hall. City Hall was renovate and restore because it is on the National Historic Registry. It'd be a shame to let the building deteriorate anymore, and it's our icon.
It is our icon.
It's on all our letterhead. It's on our. If you Google Biddeford, the first thing that comes up is City Hall.
That's right.
I mean, it's our branding, piece of branding.
That's right. When was it during your time that the clock face stopped working?
Yes. All right. So let me start at the beginning. I started in 2007. There was the first referendum for the restoration of city clock tower was in, and they had been thinking about it even before I started. There were the city councilors had put it up, and they put it up for a referendum, which failed.
Right.
And we got to the point where I went back to the architect, who was Dennis Lockman, and the engineer, who was Al Hodson. I said, these guys, what do we do to, kind of as a stopgap, what do we do as a stabilize conditions that are starting to fail? And we sat down, took us about 4 months, and we came up with a plan to budget, which then the city council granted the following year. And in 2009, we got into a restoration or stabilization work.
Could you tell us more about the Partners in Preservation, because really the point of this was not only to talk a little bit about the history of City Hall and the clock tower, but your fantastic initiative that is in the works right now.
Okay, well, it's been a very exciting short period of time. Back in July, I heard from the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the National Main Street Center, and I don't usually get a whole lot of personal phone calls from them, but they said that Biddeford has been chosen on a short list for consideration to win a $150,000 grant. Would I like to talk more? Yes, I would.
Yes.
And as we had a phone conversation, they said that Biddeford would be a good match for this, and I should apply
So
for it.
they more or less had us on their radar.
Yes. All of the Main Street programs across the country, all 50 states, were asked, do you have a historic preservation project in the heart of your downtown that $150,000 could make a difference on? And also, does your town have a story to tell about America's diversity? And so our statewide director had submitted several towns, and out of probably, 150 that were submitted, they'd narrowed it down to make these phone calls, and then they asked me to do an application. And so in July, I filled out an application and just thought this would be so exciting if we got it. And it's really a matter of weeks ago that they said, congratulations, you now have to spend a month promoting this contest, because it's a voting contest. It's also sponsored by American Express. So American Express wants to show its support of small businesses and community building on the local level, and they want this diversity story told. So
And if I understand it correctly, we're one of 20 around the country.
that's right. 20 were
And
chosen.
Tell us how good our chances are.
Well, it's 50-50, because the top 10 vote getters, it's all determined by votes, will win this $150,000 for their project. And we kicked it off on Monday of this week. And all week long, you can, when you go to voteyourmainstreet.org, you can see where your community is doing in the votes. And we've been at second place all week.
Wow.
And so if we can keep this up and keep building, we're gonna make it in this top 10. And I also just found out today, this is top secret, but nobody's listening. Of the 100,000 votes that have come in across the country, Biddeford's project has won 9,000 of them. We've almost got 10% of the votes coming to our town.
That's fantastic. If there's 20 projects and we've got 10%, that's pretty darn good.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. We're doing really well. So we've been kicking it off through tons of social media, everybody from the mayor to, well, Phil's been calling his children saying, tell this at your school that you work at. I mean, everybody's reaching out in every way. People can go online, and once they register, they can vote every single day.
5 times.
Yep,
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yep, you're given your 5 votes, and you can pick various projects.
But we don't want
don't.
you to do
I
that.
don't want you to. Put them all in Biddeford, push submit. And we've also created this video because we in the application, we created a theme called It's Our Time, because it is more than a building. It's Biddeford's time we're in revitalization, and we're not revitalizing by saying forget where we came from. We're revitalizing by saying this is where we came from. So Pete LaMontagne, who is one of the founders of the Biddeford Mills Museum, kicks off the video and says, "What time is it?" And he says, "It's time to use these again." And he's talking about, you know, his years of working in the mills for decades, was using his hands and the pride that he had in building, you know, the company, but also building a work ethic in Biddeford, an innovation ethic in Biddeford.
Right.
And then a little while later, a woman named Washima just graduated from the high school last year. She's Bangladeshi. She was the valedictorian, and she asks, I wish I could say it in Bangla, that's her language, but she asks it in Bangla, you know, what time is it? And we call on different people to answer, you know, brand new business owners, people who've been part of the community. Norm Beaupre, who's an expert in Franco history here. So we kind of just have people from all walks of life in Biddeford saying, you know, for them, what time is this? And then at the end, they're all answering, it's our time.
It's our
That's
time.
a great thing.
And
I
that
really-
particular video will be available as soon as we wrap up here at the end of this program. Right, Charles, let's get back to the immigrant population, because as Delilah pointed out, that's a big part of the Partners for Preservation. And I wonder if you can speak to not only the immigrants who may have built Biddeford City Hall, but all of those immigrants who worked in the mills, who came to Biddeford to make a better life, and what their lives might have been like.
Well, we're all immigrants. They all moved in on the Native Americans.
That's true.
Forcefully. The English settlers really got the town going. Samuel Batchelder was the second founder. Vines founded the actual grant that the city is on, but Samuel Batchelder was a man with rockets on his shoes. And he envisioned the entire factory complex. And at that time, it was like a three-parish congregational city. And then you have the Irish that come twice. They came twice. First, the Protestant Irish from Northern Ireland. They came when Biddeford was being rebuilt in 1719. And then the Roman Irish, after they started coming in the 1830s. And then after there was a tremendous labor shortage here after the Civil War, they lost about 15% of the young men from the city.
Wow.
And they came to provide labor in the mills, and also times in Canada were getting pretty rough at the time. So we have a lot of French, and then the mills actually recruited in the southern Mediterranean areas. We had Italians, Greeks, and then we had Albanians. Sometime around 1900, the local newspaper commented that Main Street, Biddeford, sounded like the Tower of Babel.
Well, you know, I remember hearing, I think Pete LaMontagne mentioned this to me, that in Pepperell Mill there was, I can't remember the number of
26,
flags.
26.
26 flags that flew in Pepperell Mill representing the workers from around the world. And I think that's pretty remarkable for a town the size of Biddeford.
And I think what's remarkable too when you're speaking of the mills is that these people were sought for their skills. You know, the people
That's a good point,
yeah,
yes.
it wasn't as if they just came here escaping like religious persecution.
Unskilled.
The agents of Pepperell sought them because think about the people from Turkey and Albania. They were very skilled in doing finish work, rugs and weaving, and that's how a lot of them came here. You know, some of the, but it was, they were welcome, and there were people on Meeting House Road. A lot of people from Germany came too. Not as many as some of the others, but I think the key is that they all got along with each other relatively, and they were welcome into our community.
Sounds like there might be a story about not necessarily getting along.
Well, I did smile at that one. I was thinking my father trying to get by the Irish gangs. He was a kid with a violin, and he had to bring his violin on his bicycle to downtown Biddeford for his lessons. And he always had, this was in the 30s, he had to run the gauntlet of some of the gangs. But Biddeford was the site of America's first mosque, 1915.
But it's not technically a mosque. It was just it wasn't really.
It was organized. It was
It
incorporated.
wasn't but it was a place where they actually met, and which was the counting house. And I'll let you.
They met. Yeah, they met in most of the time they met in a coffee house.
But anytime you meet to worship, it becomes, that building becomes
Sacred.
de facto
Right.
Mount Mosque.
Right.
Yes.
And they had Fassi in there in that mix I was talking about. They
Well, there was a woman from Maine College of Mecca, Maine College of Art, who came here, and she was doing her project on these people, Islamic groups that came here, and it was heartwarming for her. And she actually went into Woodlawn Cemetery, and there was this terrible influenza in the early 1900s where a lot of these people had died.
Right.
But if you go into Woodlawn Cemetery, you'll see their gravestones, and they're facing Mecca. And I think what's so enchanting is that we have another wave of people,
Right.
Islamic communities coming here.
Right,
And
almost a century later.
A century
yeah.
later. And I was talking to some young little girls I went to high school with my son, and they were so thrilled that the people had been here before.
Yeah.
And that's the value of history, is that you can find out what happened before and enrich your life now.
And you know, those people will take a little bit more pride in Biddeford knowing that their ancestors had been here before them. Delilah, the voting for Partners for Preservation is through?
You just go to, the easiest website is to go voteyourmainstreet.org.
And
it happens to
it's-
be on the National Geographic website.
Right.
They had to have a website that could handle 100,000 votes coming in. So
so they're the portal.
They are the portal,
Yep,
but it's
okay.
voteyourmainstreet.org. And there's kind of an easy process to go through, but I have to tell you, some people's computers, can be a little, but as long as you click sign up, put your email in there one time, then they collect that email. They have told me that it is not being used or shared with other entities. And then each day when you go on, all you have to do is log in.
Now, you said that voting is through October 26th.
That's right.
Okay. Now, but also October 20th is a very special day.
It is.
And it involves Phil. So I wonder if you both could tell us what's going to happen on that day.
Yes, and it's not too late to involve you as well. All of the programs, the 20 across the country, are participating in a required weekend called Open House Weekend. And that afternoon from 3 to 6 or so, we're having an open house with tours in the clock tower. Phil, you can talk more about that, as well as Catherine Glynn from the Historic Society will be doing presentations in City Theater, so people can come in for brief presentations. We have Leah. Is she also in?
No,
she's
but,
on the.
but we do have walking tours.
Okay, and
so,
walking tours
So
as
we
well.
have the walking tours. So myself, Catherine, Paul McDonough are going to be doing tours of all the buildings downtown, the buildings of historic significance. So will be interesting.
Yep.
So we want people to just, businesses will be open. Upper Main Street businesses have decided to use that day as like a scavenger hunt, explore Rover Bagel and Yetto's and Maine Coast Roast, just, so we're just saying the downtown is open. And then at 6 o'clock, we're meeting in City Square. I just realized I have to fill out an event application for this. We're meeting at City Square, and we'll have a presentation there. Salam Circus is going to come and do some circus performance. We have music. We have art being displayed and signage being displayed up on City Hall, and kind of a celebration right there of the clock tower and of Biddeford's history. And then another event is happening after that at 7 o'clock called True Story Theater. And we're doing this as a free event. And they're up from Arlington, Massachusetts. It's a little bit like improv theater, if you've ever seen that, where they involve the audience. But in this case, everybody who comes to City Theater, people will be invited to come up and sit at a small little chatting area like this and tell the director their family's immigration story or their story of coming to Biddeford, or either the struggle or the triumphs of being part of this community.
Yeah.
And then the director turns to her actors on the stage and says, let's do this one as a song. And on the spot,
Wow.
they make up a song about
That
your
sounds
experience.
Yeah.
It's
very
really
interesting,
cool.
yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
it happen before, and their creativity is tremendous. And so it'll be a celebration of our community and our
Cool.
history.
Are
as
we going
well
to
as our
film it?
future.
Are you filming it?
Yes, we're going to
Yay.
film it
Okay.
because that's a great idea.
So Phil, you'll be guiding tours
I'm
up
doing our
to
guided
the
tour, the same tour I give when we did Hidden Spaces, and we go up and down the stairs, and I'll probably do it another 25 or 30 times.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So from when to when on October 20th?
3 to 6.
3 to
I've
6.
set
3
them
to
up as
6.
half an hour increments. Is that
increment,
good? But people can go on to, we have a Facebook event called It's Our Time on the Heart of Biddeford Facebook page.
Okay.
So if people go there, they'll see the event and they can sign up for a free ticket.
And-
that way we know, there's not too many people going up at once.
And how do people get to your Facebook page?
If you're on Facebook, go to
Because I rarely am, and I would have
right,
to be
a lot
shown.
of people aren't.
Yeah.
So just typing in Heart of Biddeford, that will come up, and then there's a little tab for events.
Okay.
And if you don't like that, you're welcome to call Heart of Biddeford. I can say the number, 284-8520, but it would be, online or in the
And
phone book.
what's your website address?
heartofbiddeford.org,
Okay.
and the events are listed there
And
as
all
well.
the events are listed.
Yeah.
And Louise, what's the website for the Historical Society?
BiddefordHistoricalSociety.org.
Okay. And Phil, the city's website is Biddeford, Maine all spelled out, .org.
Yep,
There's likely to be information there imminently.
that's correct.
And Charles, how do we get a hold of you? How do our viewers get a hold of you should they have any questions? So see-
I'm
Or it
sorry,
can be.
guys.
It also can be Charles@BiddefordHistoricalSociety.org because it'll
It'll
jump
still
to
go
that.
Charles at Biddeford Historical Society.org.
Okay, Charles at BiddefordHistoricalSociety.org. Okay, good. Well, again, there's a video coming up right now, but I'd like to thank Charles and Phil and Louise and Delilah for explaining the history of the clock tower and this very exciting event that's coming up. So stay with us for another edition of Believe in Biddeford. Thank you.
What time is it? It's time to start using these again.
It's time for a return to Main Street.
It's time to be innovative.
It's time to think creatively about our community.
What time is it?
It's time to get some exercise in the greatest gym in the world, Biddeford's Beach.
It's time to go to class.
It's time for biscuits.
It's time to stand out.
It's time for a little comfort and sweet joy.
What time is it?
It's time to get where we're going.
It's time to make ourselves proud to live in a city where the water falls.
It's time to rise up.
Quelle heure est-il?
It's time to band together.
এখন কিসের সময়?
It's showtime.
What time is it?
It's time for everybody to sing. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is.
It's our time.
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 Our time.
Our time.
It's our time.
It's our time.
Our
It's
time.
our time.
It's our time.
It's time to restore our historic clock tower.